one of the questions that drives our work at GFI, and I expect that of many of you in the room, is how will we feed these 10 billion people that are expected to be on our planet by the year 2050 with a food system that doesn't negatively impact our climate, our biodiversity, and our scarce natural resources. Just under a third of the Earth's surface is made up of land, and of that, 71% is habitable. Of that 71%, we already use 50% of it for agriculture. The remainder is primarily made up of our dwindling forests and shrubland. Of that 50%, over 3/4 of it is already used for livestock production. And if we look at that 77%, it only produces 33% of our global protein supply. So what's the reason for this dichotomy between the amount of land we use for livestock production and the amount of protein and calories we produce from it? And the main reason is the inefficiency of the animals we raise and slaughter for meat. Take the chicken in the middle there. The chicken has been relentlessly optimized for efficiency, yet it still requires 9 calories of energy in to produce just 1 calorie of food. And the pig and other land animals are even more inefficient. And we'll learn more about the problems of farming fish and other aquatic creatures later on this afternoon. But despite a rising awareness of these inefficiencies and also the negative impact of industrial animal agriculture on our environment, on human health, and animal welfare, meat production and consumption continue to rise. This year, the world will eat more meat than ever before. And this isn't just due to the rising population. People all around the world are eating more and more meat. And by that year, 2050, when we have 10 billion people on the planet, the amount of meat that people will want to eat will have skyrocketed to a point where, if you think back to the amount of land we have on the Earth, it's just not sustainable. Simply put, there's just not enough land to produce the amount of meat that the world will want to eat. So what's the solution? Well, as you heard from Bruce, the solution is clean meat and plant-based meat. By using these technologies to create food that tastes better, is healthier, is priced competitively, and is accessible around the world, the consumer will shift. And this is already happening with plant-based meat. And when we talk about plant-based meat, what do we mean? Well, at GFI, we define plant-based meat as any food that is derived from a fungus or a plant that is designed to specifically replace an animal-based meat. And this can be a standalone product like a plant-based chicken breast, or a component that you use in an ingredient like a plant-based ground meat. And we can segment the process of creating a plant-based meat product into different technology areas, from the crops that we use to produce the ingredients and the methods we use to analyze and optimize those, to how we assemble those raw materials together and produce the final plant-based meat product, and then how we sell, market, and distribute those products in the end. And if we look a bit more closely at the crops, the starting point, crops are really where we get all of the ingredients for plant-based meats. And most of the plant-based meat products that exist on the market today rely on soy and wheat as their primary ingredients. And in general, these are byproducts of other industries like livestock feed and biofuels. But by employing some of these analytical tools like trait mapping and digital phenotyping, we can begin to better understand wheat and soy and the countless other crops that are available to us, and really understand which are the best crops to use for plant-based meats, for specific plant-based meats. And then start to use techniques like high-throughput breeding and CRISPR to modify those crops so that they're designed specifically to produce better plant-based meats. And this might sound like a sort of far-off futuristic dream, but we're actually already doing this with other foods that we eat on a regular basis. If you imagine all of the different breads that are available, the different types of textures, tastes, the different aromas that are produced when they're being cooked, all of these end product traits can be mapped back to the genome of wheat. And scientists are working on that now to use genomic selection to identify the right varieties of wheat and then optimize those variety of wheats so we can produce even better versions of bread in a more cost-effective manner. And we can do exactly the same thing with crops and plant-based meat. So once we've found the right crops, now we can start to use the countless methods that are available to isolate and functionalize those raw materials from the crops to produce plant-based meat. And there are many, many methods available, from technologies or methods such as soaking and solvents, to milling and pounding to release those ingredients from the crop, to enzymes and extruders that can restructure plant proteins so they exhibit some of the same characteristics as a protein in animal meat. And the key here is really about, just like with the crops, is thinking about the end product, the plant-based meat, and figuring out which of these methods is the right one to use for a particular plant-based meat product, and then optimize that so that it's working specifically for plant-based meat. And in addition, scientists and engineers around the world are now starting to look at new technologies, new methods that are designed specifically for plant-based meats so that these raw materials are really optimized and work much better for the production of plant-based meats. So now we've got this massive library of optimized crops and optimized raw materials. And this is really where the magic of art and science come together to create the perfect mix of ingredients and processes so that we're producing that taste, smell, texture, look that consumers are looking for when they're eating a piece of meat. And this is, I think, a really exciting area which we'll learn about throughout today, where biochemistry is really transforming the plant-based meat industry. We're identifying novel ingredients that can reproduce a specific taste or an aroma that consumers associate with a piece of meat. We're creating new technologies to encapsulate plant-based fats to provide better texture and taste. And we're also improving the nutrition of these products. So we're not only providing customers or consumers with a great tasting plant-based meat product, but one that is nutritionally optimal as well. There are many, many amazing plant-based meat products on the market today, and we get to sample some of those today and tomorrow. But I really think we've just scratched the surface in terms of what we can do with plants and turning them into animal meat analogs. And I think if we approach this with the whole process in mind and think about how we can optimize the crops, how we can optimize the raw materials, how we can perfect the way that we assemble those ingredients together to create that perfect plant-based meat, and then how we can sell, market, and distribute that in better ways so that more and more consumers switch to plant-based meat products. I think in the next few years, we're going to see more and more plant-based meat products that are really indistinguishable from the animal meat product they're trying to mimic. And we're going to learn about all of this today from the panelists, from the crop science and the nutrition through to how we're using biochemistry and artificial intelligence to create new flavors and new optimized raw materials, and then how we're aligning all of that science and innovation with the changing, evolving consumer tastes and preferences. And then how we're using different funding strategies, different investment strategies to accelerate this industry even faster than it is already. And that's our morning. As we transition into the afternoon, we'll see a blend of discussions on clean meat and plant-based meat. We'll learn about different strategies for selling and marketing these new technologies. We'll learn about how they might impact faith communities. And then finally, at the end of the day, we'll wrap up with an amazing discussion on how plant-based and clean seafood can really help save our oceans, rivers, and lakes. And with that, I'll say thank you and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.